Hey guys, this is week 13 Project Life, and I wanted to do a 5 favorite things, but I honestly had no idea what to choose. So I asked my patrons to pick 5 things for me to use, and this is what they've picked. A 6x6 paper pad, some stitching, washi tape, tags, and I'm cheating a little bit, and I'm going to use some tag dies here because I don't have a great stash of tags left anymore, and some watercolors. So I've got my photos set out already, and there's some pretty obvious spaces for where I'm going to put some of these tags in here. I did have a few little gaps after I had finished printing out my photos. So I'm going to use one for my title card, and I'm going to use one for journaling, and I'm going to use one just to fill in the space, the sort of 3x4 space I've got down the bottom there. Now this is a super old 6x6 pad from Dear Lizzie. I still love it though. I think at the time I might have actually purchased 2 because I've used this pad a lot. I feel like I've used it a lot, but there's still a lot of fun patterns in there, so I think I got 2. And so I've just pulled out a few that I think I want to use, but I decided what I would do is actually sort out my tags first, because it's going to be difficult to kind of balance out the layout without these sort of really large elements on here, and the tags are going to be some pretty large elements on this page, so I'm going to sort those out first. I'm just going to die cut them from just some white cardstock. These 2 smaller ones, I'm going to add some journaling with my typewriter. So I just laid them out onto the white card and drew a really light pencil mark around the outside of them. It helped me work out where to put the journaling, but it also helps me get the dies lined right back up in exactly the right space. All of these tag dies, they're like the nesting tag dies from scrapbook.com. I love them because they have super large ones all the way down to super tiny, so it works out really nicely for this sort of project. So I have actually done the journaling on those smaller tags, but I figured I would also create my title tag as well while I was here. So I've got another 4x6 piece of card because that's going to fit in my pocket, so I know I'm going to make it the right size to fit. I'm going to use my watercolors and just this packaging technique just to create a little bit of color on this tag. I don't want to like super much, so I'm just going to use it really sort of subtly and try and go a little bit slowly. The colors I've picked out were kind of based on the sunrise photo that's going to go next to it. So I started with sort of that darker blue. I didn't want to add too much, so I'm just adding a little bit. And then I'm adding a tiny bit of pink, and they kind of mixed together a little bit too much while they were wet. So I've decided to like dry things off in between just with my heat gun. So then I'm going to add a tiny little bit of yellow, and then I'm going to add a little bit of peach as well. So you can see it's a really simple technique. I'm not like fantastic at this sort of mixed media, but it works out quite nicely. I'm just mixing up a little bit of watercolor with my brush, adding it to just a spare piece of plastic, and then kind of dabbing it about on the paper. This is not a particularly sort of mixed media type of card. It's just a really heavyweight white cardstock, so it does warp a little bit because of the heat gun I'm using more than the mixed media, but it does flatten out quite nicely in the end. It's my last little color. Also, the advantage with using the heat gun is that I can die cut this thing straight away and carry on with it. So I've made sure that's all dry, and then I'm going to use this larger tag die. I'm going to place that so it's more, you know, I can get the watercolor where I want it, and that was a really simple way to get my little watercolor tag. Now I'm going to add the stitching part of this challenge onto my title card tag here as well, using the same wood veneer numbers that I've used for, gosh, I don't know, 6-7 years. They are super old. They came from Studio Calico. I think they were in an add-on once, and they are perfect for this thing. I've never ever used a single one of them apart from doing this stitching technique. So I've laid them out onto the tag where I want them. Just draw a really light pencil line. I do end up erasing my pencil lines, but you definitely don't have to because the stitching is going to go straight over the top of there anyway. And then I just use a drawing pin and a little punching mat to just poke some holes. When I'm stitching on paper, I always poke the holes first. You'll get a much better result rather than just stitching straight onto the paper. And I did choose this sort of peachy, some more corally kind of pink to do the stitching, the numbers with. And I just need to add my title in here. I guess I'm sort of cheating because I am adding this stamp set to the 5 things that my patrons chose, but I really did need an alpha of some sort, and this is my new favorite alpha stamp of the moment. I think it's from the Honey and Spice collection from Heidi Swap. I will say they're not the greatest quality stamps I've ever used, but I love the look of it. Kind of that really randomness suits the fact that I'm not a great stamper of getting things straight, so the more wonky it's supposed to look, the better it is for me. I'm just stamping that with some Tuxedo Black Memento ink there and adding my date underneath, and then I'm going to get on with stitching. My patrons always seem to choose techniques that take a little bit longer than usual, but I just stuck on a podcast and sat there and stitched for a little bit. I'm definitely not going to make you watch all of that. It's only 2 numbers, so it doesn't take too long, and I do like stitching on a smaller piece of paper like this rather than, say, a 12 by 12 layout. It's definitely much easier to handle. So I don't knot anything when I'm doing stitching. I'm just using 3 strands of the embroidery floss, and I use a little bit of washi tape to attach that at the back. And then I'm just doing a really simple back stitch the whole way around. I did end up using both pieces of the embroidery floss there, but it didn't take too long, maybe sort of 10-15 minutes to do the whole lot. Barely even enough time to finish my podcast. So now I've got my little title card finished, and I've got my 2 journaling tags there. I did end up doing a little bit of journaling on that second one as well. Hadn't really intended to, but I added a little line in there, and I'm going to add some stamping as well, just to fill in some of that blank space. Now I really liked this blue paper just because, I love all of the colours in that paper pad, but I thought that the blue really helped to pull out some of the colours from both my sunrise photo at the top and the little bottle of my magic gin here. Plus it ties in that blue from the title tag. So the blue works really nicely to pull the whole thing together. And the other 2 I sort of pulled out a little bit more neutral. Is this camera paper, and it's kind of teal, which added another sort of colour to the mix. There's a little bit of teal in my Happy Mail photo, so it does kind of tie in, and the whole spread ends up being really rather colourful, so it doesn't look out of place. But I really love this grey wood grain just as a background for my tag, just something a little bit more neutral for your eye to rest on. So I need 1 more paper for my title card, but I'm actually super unhappy with that teal down the bottom. And when I pull out this pink floral down the bottom here, it just makes more sense because there's a lot of pink on my top half with the clouds and the stitching from the title card, and so adding the pink floral down the bottom just balances that all out again, which when I'm making a really colourful layout like this, I kind of want to try and get it as balanced as I can. Now there were ring reinforcer dies with that set, and I did want to use them, especially for these white tags. They can look a little sort of plain without the ring reinforcers, and these ring reinforcers are super tiny. They're really thin, much thinner than the die actually looks. So I used that same blue again just for a little bit of consistency, and I'm using the same blue ring reinforcers on all 3 of the tags. So this one here is super easy. I'm just going to stick it down onto the paper. There's not a whole lot of embellishment going on this week, apart from the tags, but because everything is so bright and colourful, it doesn't actually need a whole lot of extra embellishing. Just have to go and swap out my glue runner because I don't think I've ever managed to do a process video without running out of tape. So swap one of those out for a new one, and then I'm just going to stick the tag down first and then stick my my photo over the top, And then I'm just going to use the same alpha set and the same ink there just to stamp out kind of title for the card, I guess. I was just talking about how my one little word for this year is space, and this is the week that New Zealand went into lockdown, and I had never really anticipated when I picked the word space for this year just exactly what it would end up meaning, certainly in this part of the year anyway. So I noticed my little letterboard one day, looked up and thought, whew, that was an ironic choice of word this year, so I did want to document those thoughts anyway. And this other 4x6 slot I'm creating just by using some washi tape to join my photo and the piece of pattern paper together, just so they don't slide around in the pocket. It doesn't require too much in the way of adhering things. I just added 3 small pieces of washi tape. Now again, for just a little bit of consistency, and because this is something that I actually want to be prominent on this week, just so that as I'm flicking through my album, I'll know when it was, I am going to just stamp out lockdown onto my sunrise. I keep wanting to say sunset, it's definitely not. Very early morning sunrise photo. I had hoped to get it on one line, but that didn't actually happen. I chose two bigger letters. The stamp set has each letter has a couple of variations, one's smaller and one's larger, and I chose a couple of larger ones just to get that variation, but it did mean I ended up having to stamp that word in 2 lines there, which isn't too bad. It fills up the space a little bit. And the last thing I have to do here is just glue on my tag for my title card. Now the eagle-eyed amongst you will realise I haven't used washi tape at all. You'll see in the final photos, once I stopped filming I realised I hadn't used washi tape, so I just added a couple of little pieces of a copper coloured washi tape to the top of my little photos. And that's it. I love this week, love how it turned out. I always love the challenge that my patrons set me of using 5 things that I definitely would not have chosen myself, and I love how this turned out. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up and don't forget to subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. If you want to keep watching, there are a couple more videos on screen. Otherwise, I'll see you next time. Bye guys.